Okay, so as we said earlier on, before we got cut off because of time, you've got the generic space, which is your experiential knowledge, which is influenced by your individual experiences. This thing has a link to this, as Serene pointed out to you. This is now called a projection. Now, when you think of conceptual metaphor theory, we think of a mapping. It creates a certain relationship and a link between what's going on here and what's going on here. The mapping creates a relationship between the source and the target. But what we're doing is we're creating a relationship between the generic space and input 1 and input 2. Now, it gets mapped both ways. What it also does is, because we now have our content, we know from the generic space that the one input has certain features of a lion and the other input has features of a man. What we can now do is we can draw relations, we can project onto these two inputs. So we can say 4 legs relates to 2 legs of a human. We can say that the roar relates to the speaking. It's a vocalizing aspect, a feature of each. And you can do that with a variety of things, skin, fur, and so on and so forth. And you can draw those connections. So that's called a projection. Now, the interesting thing with regards to blending is that where conceptual metaphor theory creates a link unidirectionally, only goes one way, from the source to the target. What blending does, what this entire structure does, is it goes multi-directionally. It can go in various ways. Everything comes from here, from the generic space. So nothing gets projected onto this space up here, but it can be projected from here, obviously. Feature of animal, 4 legs. Feature of animal, roar. Same happens over here with the human input. And then these two obviously also interrelate with one another. Similarity in features, although they are different because of the fact that one is an lion and the other is a man. Now, it's important to talk about the blend, or what Serene called the emergent structure, and this is the interesting part, is that when we have this knowledge, which we already have on an unconscious level in our minds, we take this and we can put aspects of this together. And we do that very unconsciously. But instead of thinking of a lion separately and a man separately, we now think of a human body with a lion head, with a roar in my case. And how do we do that? It's because this is not seen in separation anymore. It's not seen in isolation, because now we are projecting into a new space. And the projection then is our emergent structure. It's a new structure that appears here that tells us that the lion man is roaring. And now, because it's roaring, cannot be speaking. So the projection only comes from input 1, but not from input 2. We say the lion man has 2 legs, because it's got a human body. So now, from input 2, it's projecting onto the blend, and thus you get your emergent structure. And that makes the lion man in my mind. And that's why I think of it this way. So we can visually determine and show this, the cognitive process related to metaphors, among other things. And this is the interesting and the nice thing about blending, is that it is a very versatile model. It incorporates a variety of things, and when you look at conceptual integration networks and even at Evans and Green, you'll see a variety of different examples, not only metaphor, that is discussed in this regard. Now, a very relevant example and something that will assist you greatly throughout this course is if you look at Evans and Green on page 406, and that will guide you. It's a more complicated example, but one that's very, very relevant to your module. Thank you guys, I hope that helped.
Thank you, Saskia. So if I can just round up by saying one more thing with regard to that. Isn't much more to add, because her explanation was very clear and very comprehensive. But what you're imagining here, just picture a being with the upper torso of a lion and the lower torso of a man. what qualities will that person have? And this is an explanation as to how you came to think that way about this new entity that wasn't there before. And this is actually a mapping process. This projection is what blending theorists call, it's the name that they give to mapping. So the mapping that I explained earlier on, in terms of source to target, is explained in terms of projection. So blending theory and conceptual metaphor theory are both attempts at explaining this underlying conceptual mapping. And it's also called conceptual integration networks because you are integrating different conceptual input spaces. So on that note, we hope you have a tighter grip on, to use another metaphor, a tighter grip on blending theory, conceptual metaphor theory, and how it relates to framing. So from Saskia and I, good luck with your assignments, good luck with your portfolio, and again, if you have any further questions or any queries, anything that you'd like us to elucidate upon, please contact us. Saskia's email is there, Saskia's phone number is there, 012-429-6233. You can get me on suren1946@gmail.com or nikes@unisa.ac.za.